There's something that almost nobody talks about, and once you truly understand it, you'll never look at relationships in quite the same way again. It isn't obvious. It isn't the popular opinion, but it's deeply true. And if this kind of content helps bring you greater clarity, consider subscribing and supporting the channel. That way, you'll be notified whenever more reflections like this are released. From everything I've observed about emotional dynamics, one pattern continues to appear with remarkable consistency. It's not really about age itself, but about what certain men gradually build over the years, while others simply grow older without truly changing. Today, I want to discuss something that is frequently misunderstood: the qualities that men over the age of 60 often develop after they've genuinely learned about themselves, about women, and about human relationships. And no, this isn't about glorifying age. It's about understanding the kind of man that emerges when someone stops reacting impulsively and starts living with understanding. The first quality is emotional composure, not the kind of calm that exists only on the surface, but a deep sense of inner stability. This kind of man is no longer carried away by every situation, every emotional shift, or every mixed signal. Through years of experience, often accompanied by mistakes, he has realized that impulsive reactions come with a price, and that price is usually his own peace of mind. When a woman notices this calmness, she rarely mistakes it for emotional distance. Instead, she recognizes it as confidence. Because in a world where so many men react out of anxiety, the need for approval, or fear of losing someone, emotional stability becomes something uncommon. And whatever is uncommon naturally becomes valuable. This man doesn't need to speak louder in order to be noticed. He doesn't feel compelled to constantly demonstrate his value. He has no interest in silent power games. And perhaps most importantly, he isn't even focused on impressing anyone. That's the real difference. While many younger men search for validation from the outside, this type of man has learned to find validation within himself. Not because he believes he's flawless, but because life has taught him that no one else can provide him with a lasting sense of identity. This is where something that's rarely explained begins to happen. The moment a man no longer depends on approval, the energy of his presence changes. He becomes far more difficult to manipulate emotionally, harder to confuse, and much more difficult to shake. Not because he has built emotional walls, but because his inner emotional state no longer depends on outside circumstances. That doesn't make him emotionally unavailable. It simply makes him more selective. He doesn't react to everything, but when he chooses to respond, it's genuine. He doesn't offer himself too quickly, but when he does, there's real depth behind it. And although few people openly acknowledge it, this has a powerful influence on the way a woman perceives him. Because beyond words, people naturally recognize who has mastery over themselves and who is still searching for themselves through others. And this is only the beginning of something much deeper. The second quality is something that often isn't obvious at first glance. Yet once it becomes visible, it completely transforms the dynamic between two people. It is clarity in personal boundaries. A man who has reached genuine emotional maturity no longer mistakes kindness for allowing everything. Over the years, many men discover, sometimes through painful experiences, that agreeing to everything doesn't make them more loved. It simply makes them less respected, including by themselves. This kind of man understands a fundamental truth. Every single time he abandons his own boundaries simply to avoid discomfort, he pays an internal price. And as the years go by, that price accumulates as resentment, emotional exhaustion, and a gradual loss of identity. That's why, once he fully learns this lesson, the way he relates to people changes completely. He doesn't feel the need to enforce his boundaries with aggression, nor does he constantly explain or defend them. He simply communicates them calmly and remains consistent with them. And here's something fascinating from the perspective of female psychology.